are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight we are talking about mirrors and other reflective surfaces and the paranormal. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And there are many ways to support the show. You can share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platforms. You can sign up for the Patreon feed for as little as $1 a month to get all the extra content there. And you can also check out the merchandise store and get all kinds of shirts and a few other items with designs made by friends of the show. And also there is a PayPal link on the website as well if you wish to make one-time donations. And please follow friends of the show. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is the co-host of this show on Saturdays when she can make it. And we'll be talking with her in a little bit here. Also, Ricky of the Anything Is Possible podcast, who does a paranormal-themed show on Sundays that I co-host. And that's been a lot of fun. And also Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, which I also co-host fairly often, and the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows, as well as my own, online, 24/7 for free. So I think that takes care of everything there. So yeah, this has been something, it's something I think comes up over and over again in people's reports of experiences, and it's with all the surfaces. I mean, mirrors, just windows, old-fashioned glass TV screens, modern TV and other devices that have the black screen, but it's still reflective. All these things, there's so many reports of activity. I do have some articles, but I'm not going to be reading from them much tonight. Lately, my eyes have not really been wanting me to read too much, so I'm trying to not do stuff that I should not do, apparently. So anyway, Jen, welcome to the show, and long time no chat. We were just talking before the show started.
Yes. Yep. Well, I'm glad it got up and going good, and no worries there. Very excited to talk about the mirrors and everything. There is a lot of weird there. Everybody knows that. There's just something funny about it. Everybody feels something different about antique mirrors, or just having a mirror in their bedroom or not. And there's a lot of lore about where to place mirrors. So there's a lot of places to go with it. And just I've seen a lot of the way that animals react to mirrors is really fascinating. So yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it's I've only had a couple of experiences with mirrors that were kind of weird. I think I've shared them both in the show before. The first one was several years ago. I excuse me. I had I would go and stay at my dad's and former stepmom's house. There was the room I stayed in was used partially for storage. And at one point, my former stepmom had these two mirrors in this room, and it was a long, narrow room. But she had these two mirrors on the long walls, not the short walls, but the long walls, facing each other and like directly across from each other. And for a while, and I never liked walking between those mirrors, and I had no idea why. This was a good 10 years or more before I started looking into any of these kinds of subjects. But I would always just get past that spot in the room as quickly as I could whenever I could come in. And actually, there was that room, I don't know what it was used for originally, but it had two doors to the room, and there was one on basically near each end of the room. And there were times when I would just use that other door if I could get by whatever furniture was outside that door, just so I wouldn't have to go buy those 2 mirrors. And so that was the first experience, and that was with what mirrors that appeared to be older. I don't know how old they were, but
It's weird,
uh,
yeah.
yeah. But then there was another experience I had here in my apartment here once, and only once, and it was with the mirror in my bathroom. And I'm glad it was only once. This one night I had to use the bathroom, and before I even got to the bathroom, I just had this feeling like there was some presence in or around the mirror, and I did not want to look at it. I didn't want to see what it was. So I literally went in there, looking down, looking everywhere except for the direction of that mirror, and took care of business and left the room. And then eventually that night, everything returned to normal. It was fine. But for a little while that night, and that modern mirror, like medicine cabinet, it was actually literally a medicine cabinet mirror kind of console thingy.
Yeah.
And so like I don't even know what the mirror was made out of, but it was just that one time, and I don't know why. But so there's something to this whole reflective surface thing.
There definitely is, I think. I mean, I remember in a bedroom I had when I was probably like 15 or something like that, I had, a door mirror, on the back of the door. And
Mm.
I remember it always was weird. And then I got weird as in like, when you're in that age range, you're like looking at yourself a lot, like trying to make sure that, at least, I was as a young girl, I was like, just kind of, you know, trying on clothes or whatever. And it was just a weird kind of feeling sometimes, and trying to get, I guess, accustomed to it of, do I, just using it as a realm of, as a perspective
Right.
of how you think about yourself or whatever. And then, I had gotten this, when I was 13, I got this old antique wardrobe from this auction house. And it was all wood. And I had that actually until just a few years ago. And I left it at the last house, that house out that I used to live out in the country. I left it because it was too hard to move it. But I'd had it for a long time. And that had, on the door you open, it had a mirror in it. And I remember that one always freaked me out because I imagined that this antique wardrobe had like been in, I mean, it was like 100 years old or something like that. It was an antique. Just the idea that people had used it and like looked who had been looking in that. And I always made sure and closed that door and like locked it as if like, I don't know, just made me feel more secure. If I had it open, it was just, now that went away. That was only when I first had it, but it was that kind of sensation. And I remember too, a friend of mine I used to go stay the night with, her sister, and babysit her sister's daughter. And on one whole wall, it reminds me of what you were talking about at your at the one house where mirrors on two sides.
Yeah.
And in that house, there was like a full wall length mirror too. It
Oh
was probably
wow.
like 3 or 4 feet tall, and it went across probably 10 foot. It was just like this large, weird mirror wall, half wall. So you couldn't walk through the living room to the kitchen without just walking with another, reflective surface walking with you. It was so strange. But um, I've actually had, well, quite a few experiences where I thought it was really strange, and I've looked into the mirror scrying stuff, and I think there's something to that. There can be, but I
Right.
think, yeah, there's so many different angles to go with it. But basically, just feeling like there's something looking back at you, and then how strange, I know it's all, physics and angles and everything else, but just how it feels like you can see into the whole room. Like people do these things on YouTube where they hold up a sheet or a blanket, and then they have the other person like, they can't see themselves, but the other person can. There's this whole
Mm.
weird thing with that. But I think it just weirds people out about how it reflects, identically, so, for the most part, but it's almost an upside down world that's just right there. And just, it confuses the mind. And I've seen animals, they put a mirror in like the jungle in this video I watched, and there was a leopard that came up to this mirror and it became fixated on its own reflection. I mean, it was bizarre. It almost seemed to me like it was like you should go be doing your hunting and stuff, or you're gonna just
Right.
languish in front of this mirror. Yeah.
It's a weird thing about my vision the way it is because I'm so nearsighted that in places where they have mirrors that are along one wall, like any kind of business or anything like that, I have to get right up close to it to realize that the place is not twice as big as I thought it was because I can't see people clearly
Hmm.
from a distance. So to me, like there's this one restaurant that my family and I go to sometimes, and for a while, when they first opened, they had this mirror along one wall, um, and it was just like it wasn't from the floor to the ceiling, but just like halfway up the wall. And
Yeah.
but because my eyes are so different, I thought that the restaurant was huge until I happened to go there one time with family and we sat close to that mirror and I realized, oh, that's a mirror.
It's so
But at
weird.
first I had no idea. I just thought it was, yeah. So there is something weird about mirrors,
Yeah.
just in general. And I mean, it makes sense because it's it's all that it's all that light is focusing off of that surface in different ways with angles and all that, like you said, and uh, and that's just regular situations,
Hmm.
not even counting anything anomalous. So, but I've heard of reports of people seeing the places that they're in looking completely different in the mirror when they look at it, like looking older, looking back in time at an earlier version of the house. Um, I've heard of people seeing like other places in the mirror where like it's not the same place. So all kinds of weird things where they seem to be at either portals and or windows or whatever different things in different cases where
Yeah.
these things can happen.
There was this reminds me too of a mirror experience. So it's not quite like a superstitious or anything. Well, it's more of a superstitious than like a paranormal story. But so at my work, there's serving subpoenas for a court, and that's typically done by law enforcement. But from the prosecutor's office, we can take the subpoena to the people or email it to people or to the officers, if it's short notice or if it's just hard to locate their address or, if they've moved. A lot of times we'll have them come into the office or we'll send it to them by email. Well, this one case that had come up and the hearing was literally the same day, you know, and it was for this funeral home, this local funeral home we have. There was an individual who had broken into the storage units behind that funeral home where they kept their stuff. They own the storage units behind there. And they had broken in there. And so they were supposed to come and testify to burglary and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, they haven't been served their subpoenas. So I'm going to take it down there and just hand it to them and let them know. And if they want to show up, they can show up or we'll get a continuance, this sort of thing. So I go to the funeral home and I've never been in there before. And I go through, it's early in the morning kind of, and I open the front door of the building and I come in and they're open, I come in and there's a mirror directly there. And this woman speaks to me and I realize she's speaking to me from that mirror because the mirror reflects into her office. So she's sitting in
Oh,
this office and looking at that mirror so she can see who's coming in, and greet them, without coming out. And she tells me to come on in there. But I was so confused by it. It was so weird because the mirror
yeah,
was placed right across from the door so that she could see who's coming and going without having to leave her desk. So I come in there, and everything's fine. But I just thought that was like a really interesting placement in a funeral home. It was just really kind of weird. You know?
that's not going to help take away from like a potentially already eerie or
Exactly.
anomalous kind of environment when you have that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's not the best position for them.
And
I
it
mean, I
turned
get
out
it,
yeah, it
yeah,
turned out the
but
officer
yeah,
had just come there that morning and served it, so I didn't have to, so they had a heads up, but she was all mad with the short notice, of course. But
right.
it was just really weird I've used that before myself. I've had like a mirror placed in front of my doors as more of like a feng shui function, but it was
Hmm.
just so weird to see her in the mirror as if she was
Right.
talking to me from the mirror, but it was just reflecting into her office of was right next, you know, across from that mirror, one wall over, was her office
Yeah.
space. So it was neat. But I thought that was very clever of her to put it that
Yeah.
way.
Well, and for a long time, like I didn't know why businesses would have those security mirrors in the corners, near the ceiling. Like for a long time, I just, as a kid, I remember thinking, what is that thing up in the corner reflecting? It looks like a mirror, but why would that be up there? And turns out it's so that people that are working there can see around the whole store and kind of watch things and see what's going on if they have to. So that's a whole other weird thing. Uh, and I mean, really, this does connect to the whole camera thing too, because cameras sometimes pick up things that people don't see, or vice versa. And
Right.
it's being done through a lens. It's being done through, some kind of surface that catches all the light.
It is weird that we
So,
trust them so much, even though, like, on those rearview mirrors of vehicles, it says that objects may appear closer or whatever than they
mm,
actually are. But we rely on these reflective surfaces to tell us a lot about the world around us anyway. Like you were saying, for security reasons, or like on vehicles, for rearview mirrors and everything. So we trust it. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's really incredible. But I mean, there is a whole lot of lore we can get into and other things too, but just the basis of like, how we implement them in the day-to-day world is interesting.
yeah,
Whether
and
it's
I
to make a
think
space bigger or whatever. But yeah.
yeah, and then the fascinating thing to me about this, because I'd heard about mirrors being weird for a while, for several years, but then in doing research for these shows, I started finding accounts of people seeing things in other reflective surfaces, in windows, whether like exterior windows or even just windows in like furniture, like ornamental window, so you can see like inside a entertainment center or whatever. Or that one case that I mentioned a few weeks ago, where this person was a kid and they had an empty fish tank in their room, and they woke up one night and they saw something standing in their doorway. It was an older woman standing in their doorway to their bedroom, and but they were seeing her through the two empty, well, the two sides of this fish tank. But
That's
then when they
weird.
sat up, they didn't see anything. But then they laid back down again, and and then eventually she was gone. Yeah, that's really fascinating to me. So it's not just, it seems like it's almost any reflective surface can
But yeah,
in
I
some
think so.
cases allow for, us to be able to see other things, other I don't know, levels of reality, other beings and that are other places. So, but yeah.
That's weird, that phenomenon of seeing like an old woman at your door like, as a child, because I saw that too when I was a
Mm,
kid, but I didn't see it in a reflection. But just someone showing up at your door. In my case, I was sick, so like I had a cold, and so I'd been like calling out, and then just figured
right.
but I was sick as well, so you're taking like NyQuil and stuff, and I was probably like 8 years old or something. But no, I think that, looking at any reflective surface, it feels like you're seeing a different version of the same space. And how strange, too, that you may not see it in the actual room. But if you see something reflected in that mirror, you're pretty sure it's definitely there. Isn't that
Yeah.
odd? Like if you were
Yep.
to have a phenomenon where you're looking at a mirror, and in the mirror, if it were to reflect another person in the room, for example, but you look and there's nobody there, you're
Yep.
still going to think that somebody is there because the mirror is showing someone. And then there's the vampire lore, about how they don't cast a reflection, which is really weird because I had a really bizarre experience, but where for like a few seconds, like I looked up into a mirror, it was low light. So there's also that possibility, but it was low light. And it was in this that weird house that I lived in, and I talk about often. And it was the bathroom mirror. And I remember I was washing my hands, and like I looked up, and for just a few seconds, and I didn't even notice it immediately, but see my reflection for like a few seconds or something like that. It seemed like
Mm,
it should have been. But it could have been some kind of hallucinatory thing. 'Cause there was no lights, on in the bathroom except for like a string of Christmas lights. So it could
right.
have just been my eyes adjusting, and so I just didn't notice myself so obviously, and so it threw me off or something. But to me at the time, I was like, that was so weird after the fact. At the time, it only lasted like a few seconds, but it was like my eyes had some kind of weird thing, where they didn't register my own reflection for a second. And I thought of that. But the whole idea about vampires not casting a reflection, I mean, what would be the mechanism? I can't even imagine, to understand like what the mechanism or the why of why that,
Yeah.
why would that be?
Well, and you hear that with spirits too. I mean, that's part of why, what people claim to see is spirits. And I mean, we don't really know what all ghosts are. But I don't think they're always intelligent entities. I think sometimes there is residual stuff that may only appear in the mirror, but you hear that with spirits too. So I wonder if there was some kind of uh, people connecting the whole ghost appearing in mirrors or not appearing in mirrors to vampires. If they were just people linked that to them in their own minds way back when, and it just kind of stuck. I mean, now you don't hear about the whole thing with ghosts so much unless it's an experience, but everyone knows, just about anyone that's gotten into anything to do with vampires, they know about the whole vampires not appearing in mirrors.
Yeah. And then so take that into account, and then like being able to see something in mirrors, visions, for example, like with the scrying and stuff. I mean, I've tried that, where you put just like you put the mirror just so you're not supposed to see yourself in it, so it's got to be in a position where you can't see yourself, at least in the way that I try to do it. And then you have a dark room with just like a candle light, so you can see into this dark mirror. You're supposed to just kind of gaze at it until you do see something. And then, that sort of thing, but you can do that with like a cup of coffee. Just like you were saying, a surface of water. Some people put like ink in water and things like that, and they report seeing things. I mean, you do see something. You do see something, and then you're just interpreting what you're seeing. And typically it's pretty anomalous. I mean, in movies, at least what I've seen, but in movies, it's very obvious what they're seeing, and they have this really clear vision, often with sound effects and everything. But whenever I tried doing it, you do see something, and then you're interpreting what it is you're seeing, especially in liquid. Like, there's shapes that come up, especially like in coffee and things like that, or whatever, but you do see something, and then you're trying to see how you interpret that. And that's kind of, I'm sure other people might have other experiences of that, where they actually see full on visions, like you would see like in crystal ball gazing or whatever. That's a whole nother thing too, the crystal ball gazing.
True. Yeah.
I used to call that glass lookers, like people who or glass gazing, before it was called like crystal ball, And I remember hearing it with the guy who founded Mormonism. I can't remember his name, but he did that. And he would look into glass and reflective surfaces inside of a hat. Like he'd put a reflective surface inside of a hat, and then he would put it up to his face and block out all the light, and then gaze into that reflective surface and apparently get information of some kind, supposedly. And I guess his father was too. And that's a really interesting historical, point on the people using it for different purposes, but off of a mineral surface. So I've heard of people using onyx and obsidian, typically I think I've heard like high polished obsidian is, used. But I've always thought that, I can't remember if it's obsidian or some other kind of stone, but there's some kind of stone that is still used for surgical procedures. I think I brought this up a long time ago. But it's like, that's really fascinating. It's like this kind of magical, dragon glass type of thing, or, reminds me of that.
Yeah. And another thing too I've noticed in my own experiences, every so often when I have my blindfold on, and if it's like nighttime, so it's all dark around me, I will see things like in my mind's eye against the blindfold kind of thing.
Oh yes, yep. I would imagine.
It's weird because it's not like anything. I never really get frightened by it, but sometimes I'll just see like sort of colors, like blobs of color moving around in my field of vision, and they'll be like getting brighter and then getting them fading away, and then
You
as
ever
they're
see like
moving.
faces or anything?
I have seen faces a couple of times, and that's the fast. See, that's fascinating to me because that's only happened a couple of times ever. And I wear my blindfold at least for a little bit every day and every
Yeah.
night usually. And so, and I didn't get any negative, but I did get a sense of
Watching
like
something?
presence or like a
Yeah.
presence, like presences.
It
And
feels almost
I
like you're
wasn't.
watching a movie or something.
Yeah,
Is I've
and
seen with it before.
and the faces, like some of them were regular people, some of them were slightly looked like slightly different kinds of people, like not regular people, but like they had other features that were made them different, like
Morphing
you know, yeah,
almost.
morphing like creature, like animal kind of
Yeah.
animal human, like even a couple like that were like almost like rock or stone.
I know it sounds weird, but I've seen that like when you're looking at the like you close your eyes into like a meditation, that
Right,
sort of thing. Or just sort of going into a very relaxed state. But I'm looking at the the behind the eyelids, basically, I guess but it
right,
seems to take on a whole like world to itself. Like if
yes,
this and you can see the light, and it doesn't even necessarily reflect the light in the room. It's not as if there's a light in the room that's playing on the eyelids or something. But you also like you just start to see like smoke, like looking figures.
buildings
Yes.
too.
And they kind of morph into other things. And it's it must be part of the imagination, but it's also just the mind's eye sort of thing. Well, that's kind of like what it looks like with scrying. Like you're
Right,
staring into darkness and you're staring into this dark mirror or fluid or liquid. And so it's almost like you're blending those two together. And then you're supposed to take some kind of, you know, something out of it, some type of, that's a vision
right,
type of thing. But I mean, that's as close as I've seen to seeing a vision in scrying, is exactly what you're
yeah,
talking about, where it feels like you're watching and it'll look like a face coming up and then it morphs into, it's very subtle. It's not like these obvious things.
yeah,
So
no.
I kind of feel like I understand what you're talking about with that.
Oh, the one time I did have them, like it was like they were going by. This is like the weirdest one. It was like they were walking past me, and I was just seeing like the heads of them as they were like turning and looking at me, and then looking away as they were going past the building, and it was
That's
just
interesting.
really, really weird. Yeah,
I
but
was doing, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, Matt's all in the chat here says I have an obsidian scrying mirror,
That's
and
cool.
yeah, you read the smoke in the mirror, and then like tea leaves or seeing things in the clouds. I came across, and I don't know what this could have been. It's a little sidetrack here, but one of the accounts that I've shared in the show before, someone saw uh, just a huge mass of clouds in the sky that, for whatever reason, this one day looked like a giant, like the head of a jester, like a court jester, that kind of shape, and like, but also like details, like all the details of the hat and everything, and really weird. But um, yeah, so I don't know, but sorry about that. Go ahead with what you were gonna say.
It's the same thing, like looking at doing candle gazing for a long time. Like you light a candle and you just stare at it.
Mm,
You just sit there and stare at it. And I did that, to relax, basically. But you would also, there was at this one house, I was doing it, and I was just sitting there, and I had the candle lit, and I'm just staring at it, and I began to see like your brain goes into this weird because there's nothing there. It begins to like notice, the movement of the flame and everything, and then it starts to see. And I was seeing very clearly, like coming off the candle, like they look like these small figures that were like stick figures almost coming out of the flame and just walking off, like into the air, basically. And there was nothing distinctive about them.
fascinating.
It was just like they were just almost like as the smoke was coming off, it was taking that kind of shape. That's what it
Yeah,
looked like. And it looked like hundreds of them, over the time that they didn't do anything. It just kind of looked like it would take on almost like a stick figure appearance. And this is just candle gazing. And people, don't understand, but like when you're just doing, or some people do, but this type of gazing and trance work is what you would call it, of just staring into a dark mirror, as I was describing, where you don't see yourself, you just see the darkness of the mirror reflection. The same with different surfaces, and the same with candle gazing. Because you're deprived of any type of outside stimuli, the mind does work in such a way that you see something, and then
Right.
you can't sit in front of a mirror or in front of that scrying mirror as I'm describing it, or in front of a candle for an hour and a half and not see something. It's
Right.
actually how it works. And so, in fact, I would challenge anyone to stay focused on a candle and tell me what they see for after a long period of time. It's
Yeah.
very interesting experience.
Yeah, my eyes can't handle it. Like I can't look at candles too long because the
It all
flickering.
blurs out. It eventually
Yeah.
all blurs out. It's almost like your vision will even. Have you ever taken, kids have this weird practice of taking it was like almost like a science project, or you take a paper towel roll or, something like that, and you hold it up to one eye and you move the hand next to it, and it looks like the paper towel, the hole you're looking for, like through, it moves as if you have a hole in your hand. So it's like a trick of like optical illusion. That's basically the idea. It like affects the way
Right.
that you're perceiving the environment.
Huh.
But yeah.
Yeah. That's wild. I uh I do have it's a small one, like just a probably a cheap obsidian like or black mirror kind of thing. And I only used it once, and I only used it once because I just didn't feel like I got a ton from it. But I did see like a doorway, and it did look like it was almost made of smoke, like a white smoke, like a doorway, or like a doorway with a door that was mostly closed, but I could see it was a doorway. And it was there for a while, and then it faded away. And that was the only time I ever had that happen. I've never seen that again with my blindfold on.
Yeah.
Uh, just the one time. So,
I
but
used to really like rocks and collecting rocks and things like that. And
mm,
I did that for the longest time. And then, different stones and things like that. I thought that was really neat. But then I began to think about, like, if there is some type of intelligence in these materials and these minerals and such, how do they feel about just being placed in my living room? You know what I
right,
mean? Like, and they're, gosh, if there is actually some kind of animism to it at all, the whole concept of it, I was just like, well, I think I'm just gonna get rid of all of these and like put them outside, in case I interrupted something that they were doing. You know what I
right,
mean? Like, there's a very kind of arrogant, egotistical idea that like these, I don't know, to take objects and keep them as some sort of, tool, and the effect it could have, because I had this whole thing with those it's this other subject, but like those fairy ring rocks, whereas it gave me a lot of very bizarre dreams. And I was pretty much done with that after that, you know. I still kept those though. I kept them in the house, but I didn't sleep with them on myself. Like around my neck or anything like that. Like put them on a piece of string and go to sleep with them on, which is what I was
right,
doing. But like it gave me all these really weird dreams, almost like in sequence as well. So it was really weird. But then I applied that to the idea of like, the use of stones and rocks and things like that. If we do believe that there's some type of intelligence in them or some power in them, being certain that they want to be like a pet permanently placed on a shelf in your house, or,
right,
if anything, if you're wearing them, I think that's a different commitment,
right,
but then you almost kind of, is there an effect or not? And then I've heard too of these stones. This is kind of a separate topic from mirrors, collecting the energy around you, and it could become like a bad thing.
right,
Like some of these stones are meant to absorb, and they do supposedly. I don't know if it's true or not, but the whole concept is kind of, it's weird because I, spent decades just being really fascinated by it. And it's really funny because kids do that, a lot of kids collecting rocks and things like that. But the magnetism of them in general is enough to make me believe that there's something to that. How you can magnetize rocks and things like
yeah.
that.
What's funny is I have the opposite happen where if I'm having bad dreams, I have these three different crystals that I put by me that I actually put under my pillow, and it makes the bad dreams go away.
Well, then
And
that's a really good thing, I think. I would keep using
yeah,
them.
I
Yeah.
do. I have them nearby at all times just in case, because I had that happen the other night, and you know, just put those under the pillow, and I was all set. But yeah, and there's something about the black, and I don't even know if it matters necessarily what the things are made of, because again, getting to modern things, modern items, you know, modern devices, whether it's the phone or the TV screen, computer screen, um, I mean, or any kind of modern screen that has a black surface. I've had a few accounts I mention every so often in the show that I found over the years where there was something going on with that. And I don't know how it works, but my favorite example of that is this couple was had just finished watching TV one night in their living room, and they had turned everything off, and but they could, there was still they had the dark screen. So, but in the reflection on the dark screen, instead of seeing themselves sitting on the couch, they saw like the shadow figure sitting on the couch where they were, and the curtains in the window behind them, which were closed for them, were open in the reflection. So, I mean, how does that work? What were they seeing?
I don't
Is
know,
that a
that freaks me out.
projection? Yeah,
Yeah.
because what? How? I mean, that's just it's like a projection of some kind. Was some some consciousness making that image on the screen for them to see, or making them see that image? I mean,
Mm.
that's all I can think of, because it can't be a regular reflection, because the blinds weren't even open, or the blinds, the curtains weren't even open.
That is so strange. Yeah, I've heard people talk about like feeling like well, there's those weird experiences people have. They've made movies about it where they're like looking at themselves and then it's almost like a trickster type spirit is in their reflection and it just really messes with you know, their whole reality or whatever. But, or seeing something that the whole thing creeps me out a lot.
Oh
Like
yeah,
just that idea, that there could be, because it's not the real world, like the mirror
yeah,
reflecting the room. It's obviously it's just some kind of weird mind trick, but like it's the way that people confirm a lot of things by camera or by mirror. Like somebody tells you like, oh, there's a black smudge on your nose, look, and you go look in a mirror and you're like, oh yeah, there it is. It's to confirm something you can't see yourself. It's really odd. But then, so relying on it to be a true, you know, yet, but I guess most people don't actually see something super bizarre in a mirror, but a lot of people would admit, I've heard stories, for example, that you shouldn't have a mirror directly across from your bed. I've heard accounts that
right.
you should. Like, there's all kinds of conflicting stories, or, because I can't, actually, that kind of freaks me out too. Like, I have a mirror in my room across from my bed, and I never use it. It's covered with, like, fabric, and I
Huh.
never almost ever use it. It's just it's actually secured to the wall. Whoever lived here before me, like used like a screw, like screwed it into the wall. It's stuck to the wall, and so I just covered it
Yeah,
because I just don't like it. It's like I don't know who's been. That's the idea. It's this weird feeling of like who's been looking into this mirror before I did. Like, and not only that though, but just the idea of sleeping with it there. So it's a strange portal aspect, I think. And I have my grandmother's mirror from her house. I was given that when she passed away. And I have her exact mirror that was in her dining room the whole time I was growing up. And I don't know how long she had it before that, but I have that mirror at my house, and that one doesn't bother me. But even that one, I would always place it at the end of a hallway or in front of the front door, but not in my
yeah,
bedroom thing. Yeah.
yeah. No, it's yeah. There's something weird about how that, because I do wonder, like, can some rare circumstances, because I talk about time anomalies and alternate or parallel universes all the time, and I mean people have experiences that seem like that's what they're experiencing. So if they're having that, then how do we know that mirrors in some rare cases can't be also, looking into other times or other versions of, other other versions of reality that are similar but not quite the same as this one? If our own eyes, our own minds are also somehow possibly connecting to those places. You know, we have eyes, we have our own sort of reflective surfaces that we also use to look at things with. So I don't know. It just makes me wonder about that when people see such anomalous things beyond their own reflection, any version of their own reflection. Like when they're seeing different rooms or different people in the same room, or in that one case, you know, the room being in a different state than it was. To me, that just makes me think some other some other place that maybe is similar but not quite the same as what they're in at the time that they see whatever they see.
I think at the end of the day, that's what we're all feeling like. I mean, I think you can just look at a mirror in a very plain way. You know, you can be very pragmatic and be like, "Oh, it's just to check my hair or whatever." You know, I guess
Yeah,
we can look at it that way, but you know, it's something weird to look. I think it's something weird about looking at yourself. You
right.
know, I really do think there's something that feels weird to see yourself. You know, like that leopard in the forest I was talking about.
Yeah,
Um, when it was just walking, they had placed this large mirror, just in the forest floor. It was like a good, you know, probably 5 foot by 6 foot mirror, you know, and so it was this large reflective surface. And this leopard just comes up and notices another leopard. You know, and at first tries to like attack the mirror a little bit and then eventually notices that that's not really what's going on. I've seen bears attack mirrors when they see themselves. They just, you know, there's something it sets off in the mind. But then back to that leopard, it became like fixated. And eventually, at first, it was pretty aggressive. It continued to be kind of aggressive towards its own reflection. And then it sort of became endeared by its reflection and it would walk behind and look and it just couldn't figure it out. And it just, you know, it was almost kind of like inappropriate to like
yeah.
put that mirror there to mess with that poor animal, you know, but makes you really wonder about it, you know?
Well, it hasn't stopped science from doing
And yeah,
a lot of inappropriate things to all kinds of
that's
beings,
true.
humans and animals alike. But yeah,
And I've heard
uh,
of, you know, things
yeah,
languishing, looking at, wonder what they're even looking at, you know, it's just really weird. But I think we
yeah,
see it too. Cameras, you know, the
right,
whole idea of a camera stealing a part of your soul, you know,
yeah.
it's some people believe that, you know. Um, I don't want to believe that, but a part of you kind of wonders, you know, if it's
Are
true.
there at least being something, even if it's not necessarily I don't know stealing, but like copying or something, or
Yeah.
photos
Something
can take
like
an
that.
energy from someone. Because I've told this story before, but it never fails to make me wonder what was going on there. That picture that my cousins and I found in my grandparents' house, where we were exploring the second floor, which we never did, and they never told us we couldn't. We just never did it until this one time, and we never did it again because of this. And we found this desk, and we found this drawer in the desk that had a picture in it, and it was people that looked kind of like they were family, but we didn't recognize anyone. And there was an older man in the picture, and as we were looking at the picture, the older man turned his head. It was like something from a horror movie, even though we hadn't really seen horror movies yet. Uh, and smiled at us and looked at us with these red eyes. And we just dropped it and get out of there as quickly as we could.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I don't know what my other cousins remember about that now because it's been so long. That was like I don't know. I was maybe 10 or well, no, it had been after. It was like when I was 14, 15. It was after my first experiences, but not long after. So,
It's super upside
yeah,
down world, like because you know there's that meme even pictures or it didn't happen or something like
right.
something to that effect. It's like it's so weird. And the last thing I always pointed this out, like when people do experience something where they see like a cryptid supposedly or they see a spirit or something, and then people are like, "Why didn't you take a picture?" It's like that's the last thing you're thinking of.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
unless you're there intentionally to do that, like. And it rarely happens on those occasions. Like if you're intentionally there looking for something, it often doesn't happen. And when you're not looking for it and it does happen, because you experience it, the last thing you're thinking is to take a picture of it. It's But anyway, I mean, it's kind of a side topic, but
No, but and then there's some cases, especially with like UFOs, stuff in the sky, lights and all that, where people will think about that. Oh, I should take a picture of this, and whatever they're looking at will either be gone by the time they get their camera up and ready, or they'll get like a feeling or a message where no, no, you don't need to do that, and so they won't because they feel like I'm not supposed to do that. And I mean, in some rare cases, people have these experiences, and then there's this weird thing that will happen in rare cases where it's almost like they forget about it, like the whole experience until the topic comes up somewhere, years down the line, and then they remember it. But then sometimes, the other people involved won't remember it at all, even if you describe it to them. So
that's really weird.
yeah,
But seeing it again, but I do think that there's something. Think about that, like the mirror versus pictures versus videotape. It's all the same medium. So
right,
there's just something impermanent about the mirror. The mirror is basically a camera, but it
yep,
doesn't, you can't replay it again. So you're just seeing it sort of live. Or can you? Can the mirror show something
yeah,
it has seen? It's almost like a weird contorted, like a window of the soul of the space around you or something. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe those times when people see other settings around them, other places around them in the reflection, it was there, and there was this other, the place did look differently at a certain point in time, and that's its own version of a recording that's playing back, almost like a residual haunting kind of thing, but with a mirror and showing images of the past or the future. Who knows? So
Yeah, I don't know. But we didn't really get into any of the things, but I think we covered a lot, you know.
yeah, well, I mean, if there's anything else you want to cover, we haven't gone a full hour yet. So if there's anything else you're interested in, we can cover more. Or if you want to, we can stop. It's up to you either way.
Well, I mean, it's just, I mean, eventually, what is there to make of it? I don't
Right.
know. But, because these
Yeah.
articles you'd posted, and those were really good as well.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad. I would rather have gone through those tonight too, but like I said, I don't feel up to it too much this time.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point on this with those articles and
Or
do it
something.
that way. But
I wondered too
yeah,
about just I've heard reports too of people watching. You see this in movies and movie tropes, like where people are like watching a movie, and some people have related it even to like the what do you call that? Where I can't remember what the term is now, right off the top of my head for some reason, where they remember things differently than they actually were.
Mandela effect.
Mandela effect. The whole idea of people seeing like movies and things like that, and then noticing that they're changed somehow. It almost goes into
Right.
that whole idea of like, yeah, that there is a whole entirely different, and maybe because of the attention of, people focusing on it or what, but I wonder what the world would be like if we hadn't received, the idea of the making of mirrors and lenses and glasswork, basically.
Yeah.
You couldn't do any of the things we're doing now without it.
Yeah, and it's so weird because it does seem to be. It has to do with all kinds of glass. It has to do with any kind of reflective. Um,
Microscopes, telescopes,
yeah, it's
mirrors,
just
the whole
everywhere.
thing. Yeah.
Yep. Funny story about that training center that I'll be talking about maybe next time. That training center that was really haunted. The apartment that I went into partway through my time there, the first night, they said I could go in. They gave me the key and everything. I opened the door and I saw someone standing in the middle of the apartment, in the middle of like a mostly dark room, and I stopped because I was just surprised to see someone there. And then this figure stopped, and then I moved a little bit because I was surprised, and then moved. And I went forward a little bit as I started to realize what was happening. One of the doors in the apartment had a mirror on it,
That's
and I was
weird.
seeing, just my shadow, basically my shape reflected in this mirror. It's like,
Okay.
oh, thanks, people. That's a real good place for that mirror, and that, right as you're coming in. So,
There
but
was
yeah,
a movie I watched recently. It's called people will know what I'm talking about. It's what's her name? Um, gosh, Natalie Portman.
Mm,
And in the movie, it's like there's been an alien invasion of some kind, and the military's gotten involved because, um, there's some kind of part of the Earth. There's a spreading shimmer, basically, and people who go into the shimmer never come back, or if they do, they come back not quite right. And Natalie Portman's a scientist, and she goes in there, and it's military too. She's military, yada yada. So she goes in there, and she comes across this being, and what it is this alien life form or whatever is emulating and morphing through genetics its environment. So the plants are themselves, but they're distorted, and so on and so forth. And she sees basically this alien life form is like emulating her perfectly, but it's just a reflection. And so,
mm,
like, this sort of idea that it could like take over because it's a mirror, it's the whole cloning doppelganger effect sort of
right.
concept. I thought that was really interesting, about what you were saying about seeing that. And then I remember going into this haunted house on Halloween a couple years back, and it had funhouse mirrors in it. And it was so disorienting. Like I like that was the worst part was the funhouse mirrors section of this haunted house. And it was completely disorienting. I almost had to like call for help. I was like, I can't get out of here. Like I don't know how to get out.
Yeah.
Someone this is too much. Like I couldn't figure out even how to get out of there. There were like so many different because it went on for like a whole like hallway and a half. And it was so confusing to my poor mind, as we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to get out of there.
I
So it's
can't
like I need an
imagine.
assistant to help me out.
Yeah.
I got out of there eventually, but it was just so disorienting, you know.
I think the only way I'd be able to get out of a place like that is if I literally had my cane and I just dragged it along,
There was
pick the
smoke.
wall, pick the
It was
the left or the right and just follow the wall
Yeah,
until I got out of there.
exactly. There was like a fog and there was scary noises and the mirror was all crazy and it was just these funhouse mirrors, so you can't tell which way you're coming or going from and you walk into yourself almost and I hated it. But it was fun, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So we have in the chat here, Eric says in December of 2024, 38 scientists, including several synthetic biology researchers and two Nobel laureates, warned that the creation of mirror image life could cause unprecedented and irreversible harm to human health and ecosystems worldwide. Yeah, that's fascinating. Huh.
It is.
Um,
It reminds me of that. It's like that leopard, how inappropriate that was
and
to
this makes
confuse
you
it.
think, yeah, definitely. And this makes you think of all the sightings that we come across, and I've come across a few here and there, and I've heard about this before. People see um, these figures, like these humanoid figures out in the world, whether it's out in nature or around buildings too in some cases, but they are literally just a white, like a solid white humanoid shape. And sometimes they appear with eyes or like a mouth, sometimes they don't. And I can't remember if we talked about this before or not, but I always wonder with those, like, are those shapeshifters in the middle of a transition, or are people not familiar with any of these anomalous things, not thinking about wondering if it's a Sasquatch or an alien or whatever, and so there's no images for either the mind to put on what they're seeing or for these other beings to take from the mind and project to the people.
I don't know. But it freaks me out what he was talking about, what Eric was saying in the chat about that destroying ecosystems. And we talk about all the time the fixation on the screen.
Hmm.
There's always this issue with that, with our society. So, in particular, television and all of that, and for kids, watching screens and everything. It reminds me of that leopard with the mirror and the mirror concept too, of like people just there's all these different stories of, languishing in front of this, the mirror, fascinated by the reflection. But then in addition, in the world shown in the reflection, it's the same thing with like, it's a minor of the same thing
Yeah.
of people not doing what they're supposed to be doing because like they're just so fixated on what's happening on the reflective surface, and whether it's their own reflection or it's as if the reflection has taken on a life of its own, and it's in a case of a movie, for example, or something, or in case of, so many screens or whatever. But there's
In
something
video
weird about,
games,
but I mean, at the
people
same
that,
time, it's a
yeah,
means of communication as well. So I don't, I don't know.
yeah, or even in video, I mean, people that, they get super addicted to video games and they spend literally days without moving at all, you know, away from
People,
to do anything.
their children like starve to death because they're playing World of Warcraft.
And it's
There's like crazy
yeah,
stuff like that. You know,
and it's so weird because it's a problem, obviously. I don't know. It's such a tricky thing because obviously there are people, kids and people all around the world that play games that don't, they don't go to that extreme, but then how does that happen with certain people? It's just it's sort of, but it is it's being focused on that screen and all those frequencies, all those images, all that stuff.
but if you
I mean,
take it
it
away,
is, yeah,
you're taking away like people are living in this world now. Like
yeah,
if you people who say like, okay, well, take the screens away from the kids, take the computers away from the kids. It's like, and they will grow up in a world where they're computer illiterate when the world is going that direction. Like
yeah,
what is the right way? You know?
yeah.
So
No,
yeah, I don't know.
I always talk, I hear people sometimes, and to each their own, but I'll hear people talk about how, we need to get to, go back to the way things were and no technology. And I'm like, no, 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 just stop, because there's a lot of people that, like myself, if I didn't have technology, you know, I'd, things would be a lot different. It's in everything I do, so,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
Um, it's a huge topic with that whole degree to it, but I do think there's got to be
it's-
like a balance with it. But I don't think that if the world is going this direction and you take on a fundamentalist mindset, to like try to pretend that's not there, doesn't make it not there.
yeah,
It doesn't
no,
mean exactly. Yeah.
yeah, but, yeah, we can definitely at some point do a part two with some more articles and stuff. Another time when like I said, when my eyes feel like doing a lot of reading and stuff, and go from there. But I think this is a good start, and then next week we'll be getting back to my experiences, so that'll be fun.
Sounds good.
And
Sounds great.
go from there.
I had a great
So
time and thanks for having me and I had a lot of fun.
yeah, thank you as always for being here, and have a good night. And thank you all as well for listening in and being here, and for all the chat. And I'm sorry about the new channel here, but I'll talk about that more after I stop the recording. But yeah, thank you all for being here, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. And take care.